Sometime this week, the Assembly will take up the abortion measure. It will become the most liberal abortion law in the country.
I think you have to understand that the Republican Party was not what it appears to be today.
We did not have women candidates for office.
When something wasn't right, she felt an obligation to fix it.
If you know the judicial system the way I know the judicial system, it just seemed terribly unreal to me.
It's my firm hope that we defeat this measure.
Illegal abortions are being performed.
This president stands with you on this issue of life.
So unhumane and so unchristian.
That is not the same view of all people under all circumstances.
Could we have saved young women from dying if we had not imposed upon them our sense of morality?
The law doesn't eliminate abortions. It merely drives them underground.
Connie Cook understood better than just about anybody else.
Any woman that wants an abortion can get one. And the real difference is how much money she has to spend.
If you're in politics, it's the pushing that hurts, to put your colleagues to the test. That is not a popular thing to do.
She had higher purposes than just winning an election.
She wasn't just a one-issue person.
Until women have a place in the major institutions of our society, we will remain second-class citizens.
I'm amazed that she had the vision.
Almost all of us ended up being involved in women's causes.
It's nice to know that women from a previous generation have paved the road for us to have that choice, to consider going into politics.
We were all aware of such a wonderful life she had led, so many different things she had done.
It's important that we know the people who paved the way. If Connie Cook were here, she would be leading the charge.
I never saw myself as not working, and again, prominent women were saying women have to drop out and have their family and then go back in. I thought, well, that's crazy. How can a professional, it's hard enough to lose the time you lose and keep competitive, let alone take a block of 10 years.
I'm not sure Connie ever thought about getting married because she really was a career person, and in those days it was hard for women to do both. It was hard for society to see women doing both. But Connie had this doctor who was insisting it was good for her to be married, and this man needed to be remarried, and he was sure they would be happy together. She told me she went in to see Dr. Galvin, and he sat her down and said, you know, I don't think it's healthy for women to go through life unmarried. And I think you should meet my other patient. His name is Al Cook, and he's a recent widower. And suddenly this happened, and she married Al Cook. And shortly thereafter, there was Kathy Cook, and then there was John.
Our daily routine when she was not here was that my father would get us up and ready for school, cook breakfast, send us off, and in the afternoon after school, he would usually be home, and then later cooked us dinner as well, made sure we did our homework and put us to bed. And so that was our routine during the days.
Al really was home with the children and allowed her to go off and do things. It was an unusual marriage because of that. And I think it was also a marriage that forecast marriages to come, but it was unlike those of the day.
Sometime this week, the Assembly will take up the abortion measure already passed by the Senate. If the Assembly approves the measure, it will become the most liberal abortion law in the country, a law that says only that a woman receive permission for an abortion from a licensed physician.
It's really important to remember how critical Connie Cook's single piece of legislation was at that moment in history. Connie Cook understood better than just about anybody else that women were having abortions in 1970. They were having them while they were debating the law, and they were going to have them after the law had passed. And because of her one law, which passed in 1970, New York State became one of the first states in the country to make sure that when women have abortions, they'll have them safely in a high-quality environment, and that's affordable, and without judgment or shame. And that's a pretty powerful legacy.
In my day, and this is only because we had the background then of this burgeoning feminist movement. And when I was young, you couldn't even mention the word. It was absolutely taboo.
You know, 1970, so many things were founded, but also many, many political movements were intersecting. And the free speech movement, really radical, and civil rights movement was still, I mean, things were really shifting, but there was still so much energy around racial justice. And the women's liberation movement was really picking up steam. 1970 was probably one of the biggest years. And so I imagine that, you know, the glimmerings of this kind of thinking were really, really supported by this energy, especially from young people. That, you know, that maybe there was going to be a sea change and it would be supported by the people of the future.
Whether or not people believe in abortion, illegal abortions are being performed, and those abortions must be taken out of the hands of quacks and butchers. The simple rationale for making abortion available must be justice for women. The decision to have a child should not be a matter to be decided by the male-dominated legislatures.
One of the ways in which you can see how women moved from being out of the public sphere into the public sphere has to do with their achievement of certain rights, but it also has to do with the way they were referred to. In a 19th century history, and I'm quoting from the Cortland County history, Mr. Van Oterdonk had 5 children. Well, he did not bear the children. He did not, I'm sure he wasn't cleaning the children and feeding the children and taking care of the children, but he had 5 children. And in that statement, his wife is encompassed but never named. By the end of the 19th century, women were being named, but in general, they were Mrs. Samuel Smith. It's only by the time you get to the 1970s, you get out of women being named by their husband and women being named by their own name. One of the most striking photographs I can think of concerning Connie has to do with the 4 women in the New York State Assembly who are listed by their own name by now. So she is Mrs. Constance Cook, but the title of that picture is Little Women.